You know, in the history of data tech, some rivalries are so big they don't just define a product, they end up defining an entire era. And today, we're digging into one of those foundational battles. It's the long-reigning king versus the disruptive challenger, a fight that completely changed how pretty much every business on the planet thinks about its data.
And for a long, long time, it wasn't even a competition. In the world of enterprise data, there was really just one name that mattered. They were the default, the absolute bedrock that global systems were built on. But, as we all know, no king rules forever.
So, to really get this story, you have to start with the one who is already on the throne. Let's talk about the original giant in this space, Informatica.
I mean, just think about that date for a second. 1993. That's practically the Stone Age in data terms. Informatica wasn't just a player. They basically wrote the playbook for what enterprise ETL was supposed to be. If you were a bank, a hospital, a government agency, you just couldn't afford to take risks. You chose Informatica, period.
And this timeline, man, it just lays it all out, doesn't it? Look at that gap. We're talking 12 years. In the tech world, that is an eternity. By the time our challenger even shows up, Informatica is this deeply entrenched, public, massive company. This was never going to be a fair fight. It was a classic David versus Goliath setup from day one.
And that, of course, brings us to our David, the underdog who came out of nowhere with a completely different game plan, Talend.
Okay, so what's so brilliant about Talend's approach is that they didn't even try to out-Informatica. No way. Instead, they attacked the problem from a totally different angle. They leaned into this new, growing open-source movement, and they offered tools that developers loved. They were flexible, and crucially, they didn't come with that eye-watering enterprise price tag.
So, before we get into the big clash, let's just make sure we're all on the same page about what they were fighting over. ETL. It stands for Extract, Transform, and Load. Sounds super technical, but it's actually pretty simple. It's just about grabbing data from one place, maybe cleaning it up or changing it a bit, and then loading it into another place. Every single large organization on Earth has to do this, which is why this market was, and still is, worth billions. And here's the most important part to understand. This was never just about which software had better features. It was a genuine clash of philosophies, a fundamental disagreement on how software should even be built and sold in the first place.
And you can see the two worldviews right here. Informatica was selling peace of mind. Their whole pitch was, look, we are the safe bet, we're reliable, we're scalable, it just works, we've got your back. But Talend? They were selling empowerment. Their message was, hey, here are the tools. They're open. You can build whatever you want, however you want, no vendor lock-in.
This chart just breaks it down perfectly. Just look at those core promises. Reliability at a price versus freedom with risk. I mean, that's the whole trade-off right there, isn't it? Informatica went after the Fortune 500s, the companies that couldn't afford any risk at all. In Talend, they found this huge, passionate following with startups and mid-sized companies that were desperate for that flexibility and, frankly, the cost savings. All right, so you've got these two very different ideas out there in the wild. How did the actual customers respond? Where was this battle for hearts, minds, and budgets really fought? This was the exact question that was being debated in IT departments and boardrooms all over the world. Do we pay the premium for the guaranteed, proven thing, or do we take a chance on this newer, more flexible, open-source model, even if it means we have to do more of the heavy lifting ourselves? And believe me, there was no easy answer. And for the most part, this is how the market shook out. Informatica held on to its iron grip on the biggest companies in the world. Meanwhile, Talend was just absolutely killing it in the startup scene and with mid-market tech companies. But that third slice on the chart, that's the really important one. Because this whole rivalry was happening right in the middle of a massive, industry-wide shift away from old-school proprietary software and toward open source. Now, a company like Informatica doesn't get to be a giant by sitting still. They absolutely saw the threat from Talend and this whole open-source wave. So what did they do? They evolved. They started expanding beyond just ETL into areas like data quality and governance, and maybe most importantly, they made a hard pivot to the cloud, reinventing themselves as a modern SaaS company. And at the same time, our challenger was growing up. In 2021, Talend gets acquired by a major private equity firm. This was a huge deal. It was basically the signal that the open-source disruptor was now a serious, grown-up enterprise player. The scrappy startup days were officially over. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, what's the real legacy here? It's so much bigger than just these two companies. In a lot of ways, the rivalry really defined an entire era of data.
It really all boils down to three huge impacts. First, Talend proved once and for all that open source could handle the big leagues. It could be trusted in the enterprise. Second, all that competition forced both of them to innovate way faster, pushing the entire industry toward the cloud and modern tools. And finally, their fight paved the way for the explosion of data tools we have today. You can draw a straight line from their conflict to the debates we're still having about the modern data stack.
But when you strip away all the technical jargon, all the features, all the pricing models, the story of Informatica versus Talend is about something much, much more fundamental.
It was all about philosophy. One company promised stability from a trusted vendor for a price. The other promised freedom and flexibility with a bit of risk. And that tension, that pull between two powerful but opposite ideas, it didn't just build two giant companies, it shaped the very conversations we have about data today and created the world of data as we now know it.